Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining from Chaos to Clarity, 3 ways to transform your tech stack. We're super excited to have you here today. My name is Wilson, and I am part of the growth marketing team here at Outreach. So a quick bit of housekeeping before we dive in. The session is being recorded, and you will receive the recording in your inbox afterwards. The Outreach team is also here to answer any questions, so definitely feel free to use the Q&A function at any time during the session. For today, we have two fantastic speakers. We have Maggie Valentine, who's the Technology Alliance Director here at Outreach, and Kelly Sheets, who is Head of Global Marketing Operations at Zoom. So super excited to hear the insights that they will share today. And with that, I'll hand it over to Maggie to kick things off.
Awesome. Thank you, Wilson. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. We are thrilled to have you for a webinar that is, I think, a very relevant topic for today's market. As Wilson said, my name is Maggie Valentine. I am the Technology Alliances Director here at Outreach. I've been here for 5 years now, which is quite a long time in startup world. And all of this time, I've been focused on our technology partnerships. And so it's really exciting to have Kelly from Zoom here with us today as we are talking about the tech stack. And key to everyone's tech stack is integration. So I'm really excited to have this conversation with Kelly. Kelly, do you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, and then we'll dig into a little bit more about what we're going to cover today.
Thanks so much, Maggie. It's a pleasure to be here. Hi, everyone. So I'm Kelly Sheets. I lead our global marketing operations team at Zoom. I'm coming up on 3 years at Zoom. And what really got me excited and has kept me there this whole time is I joined post-pandemic. So you can imagine Zoom went through the Zoom boom. It became a verb. And I joined when a foundation desperately needed to be put in place. So that challenge continues today. And I think this is incredibly relevant to transforming a tech stack, where during that time, a lot of tools were acquired, brought on, onboarded, a lot of different data sources. There is so much that was happening at that time, and it just becomes even more relevant in the world and age of AI and how it's evolving, that modernizing your tech stack and ways to do that just become so important.
What a time the pandemic was. I talked about this in my LinkedIn post when we were promoting this webinar. So self-plug, if you're not following me on LinkedIn, you should be. I post once a month, maybe. But when I was talking about this webinar, I was thinking about the last panel I hosted for Outreach was actually at our customer conference, Unleash, in 2023. And at that time, ChatGPT had kind of burst onto the scene. Everyone was talking about it. And I borrowed a quote from some article I saw that said, we were kind of comparing AI and software to all natural in food, which was, a great label, but nobody really knew what it meant or how to use it. It was more just marketing. And 2 years later, now that we're really understanding AI in a new way, I think we've probably graduated to more like organic. So there's more substance, more standards, but really we kind of just still have a lot of confusion about what AI actually means for your tech stack. Is it driving outcomes? Is it reducing friction for sellers? Maybe have we finally achieved the coveted single pane of glass? But if you're sitting in that seat and you're kind of wondering, is my tech stack really helping me grow, or is it getting in the way? Then we are hoping to solve that question for you today, maybe give you some tips to make sure that it's helping you grow. So before we get into everything, we are going to have a poll to kind of see where you're at to start. We'll give everybody a few seconds to answer, but essentially we want to know, how would you describe the current state of your revenue tech stack? Is it fragmented, hard to manage, mostly connected, but still clunky? Is it consolidated, but not very intelligent? Or are you just leading the pack and you have a unified stack that's AI powered? While we give everyone a chance to answer, Kelly, how do you think you might answer this question?
Yeah. So what I would say is, whoever is answering D, I don't believe you. I would very much put ourselves in the B category, mostly connected, but still pretty clunky. Again, we are still sorting out and putting that foundation in place today. And as we work through that AI revenue strategy, it becomes even more important of, yes, they're connected, but what does connected mean? Simply connecting your systems doesn't give you or drive the outcomes that you would necessarily be wanting. So
Totally. I bet a lot of people in the room agree with you. And I know people on LinkedIn do. So we asked our LinkedIn audience to describe their current state of their tech stack. And looks like the majority was feeling pretty fragmented and maybe connected, but clunky. And looks like 5% were liars. So we'll talk to you later if you've got it all figured out.
Yeah, please help us. If you have it all figured out, I'd love to talk with you.
Exactly. So we kind of hit on this at the beginning, but AI enabled revenue strategy, it really used to kind of be this buzzword term, but to now it's just integral to the way that revenue organizations are functioning. So it's kind of this essential component of modern revenue execution. So for our first question, we want to know, AI features are everywhere. They're in every tech stack that we're talking about. They're in every product we're looking at or evaluating. But what really defines that AI-enabled revenue strategy? What makes it different than just having AI features in a tool? What do you think, Kelly?
Yeah, I think this is such a great question. So, from my perspective, AI needs to be positioned as a core strategic capability rather than just an add on feature. In my mind, the real value of AI for revenue teams is it's serving as that guide for strategic decision making. So it's helping you answer questions like, where do I put my marketing dollars and in what channels? It's helping answer questions of, how do I increase my deal size, or how do I acquire new logos? How do I reduce churn rate? So that layered strategy with AI is important for that key decision making. It also needs to be a holistic and extensible approach. So just adding in AI within certain parts of your revenue process is not a full strategic approach. So you need to think about it all the way from pipe generation through forecasting, through retention, renewal, customer success. It needs to live and breathe through that entire flow and process. And the last thing I will say is that making sure that your AI revenue strategy has a continuous learning model. You're getting those feedback loops that is constantly making your revenue engine smarter over time.
Totally. That makes perfect sense. I think we often get caught up in just focusing on one piece of the strategy instead of thinking about the holistic strategy that companies have with go-to-market, which is why I love that we have your perspective here as someone who's kind of in marketing and also RevOps to understand holistically, not just what this means for sellers or marketing, but really the full go-to-market funnel. So with that, where are you seeing teams kind of go wrong when it goes to applying that AI into their go-to-market motion? Or maybe where are they getting stuck trying to apply AI in their go-to-market motion?
Yeah, where I see the biggest challenge is companies, and I, humbly would say that Zoom does this at times, that there is such urgency to adopt AI within your go-to-market strategy. And the first thing that folks are doing are jumping right to a tool. I need this particular solution. This tool looks like it's going to solve it for me. Instead of developing that proper strategy where AI, again, is supporting your overall engine. And so at Zoom, how we're approaching that is we're really aligning on the core challenges in our use cases first. We're moving fast, but we're being deliberate in how we're approaching it by working back from the customer, working back from the problem statement. And from a revenue ops perspective, any AI initiative that we are prioritizing has to align with these key priorities. So for us, it's employee productivity. How are we making the lives of our employees better, faster, more intelligent to give them that productivity back? We're always thinking about it from a sales growth perspective, how are we growing our revenue? And then lastly, from a customer satisfaction, and really focused on the support side of the house to make sure that we are helping our customers get the support that they need and have the ease of use of using our solutions.
That makes a lot of sense. And I, obviously, when I think about employee productivity and the tools that they're using, we kind of start to think about, especially with Outreach, the revenue team and how they're using AI to further drive sales growth, right? And so with this next question, we kind of want to look into the looking glass and understand, where is AI really taking seller workflows? If you could look forward a year, where do you see AI taking kind of the sales workflow next?
Yeah. So, what I'll first say is I am not believing in the hype that a sales rep is being replaced by AI. And I think, from a tool like Outreach, you are purposely building that platform to be human centric. And so I would think that you would agree with that sentiment. But where I think that AI can be so powerful to a seller is being that proactive co-pilot for them. So if you can think about any part of their workflow, let's take, for example, the prospecting workflow. We think at Zoom that we can give about 10 to 15 hours back in their work week by helping them automate routine tasks. So take, for example, account research, contact sourcing, personalized outreach messages, being able to summarize their meeting notes and then have next steps for follow-up, and then taking all of that and thinking through those insights at scale. That's where we feel like AI is so powerful to help be that co-pilot for a seller. And then let's lean on the seller to do what they do best, which is relationship building, building trust with their customers, and really closing business. And we think by pairing these two, giving the sellers time back to focus on what they're best at, we're going to see more meetings booked, more revenue generated, and happier customers.
Totally. It makes a ton of sense. And I like to think, I think Copilot is obviously such a buzzword. So many companies are using it to even describe the way that their agents function. But for me, when I think about sellers and how they're actually using some of these agents to help, it's not that the seller's being replaced, like you mentioned, by these tools or these agents. It's just like you mentioned, they're making their lives a little bit easier, and they're not, I don't think agents are at the point where they're opening the door and booking the meeting for the rep, but they might be at the place where they're making a door that's typically locked or really hard to get through unlocked and cracking the doors. And the seller just has to walk through and save time and really get to that face-to-face meeting with the buyer, like you mentioned. As we start thinking more about the tech stack and where things are going with AI, I think we're only going to continue to see consolidation as people are looking for this single pane of glass to work from. I've heard this term my entire tenure in partnerships, especially with tech partners. Everyone wants to be the coveted single pane of glass tool. But what that doesn't necessarily mean is just a single tool. It just means tools that work very well together and are consolidated into a workflow. And so how are we thinking about kind of what success looks like for successful revenue tech consolidation? How are you thinking about that at Zoom?
Yeah. And what I would say is I'd probably start with what I don't think consolidation is. And that is cutting tools for the sake of cutting tools. To your point around a single pane of glass, that doesn't mean one tool, one system. That means something else entirely, of where you are bringing in a more seamless, intelligent, efficient ecosystem of tools, right? That you can see in one view, but doesn't necessarily mean that you're cutting a tool out or jamming two tools together that don't work together and drive the outcomes across your revenue engine. So I would say it's really focused on that seamless, intelligent, and efficiency when it comes to systems. And so I'll just give a quick example of how we actually were able to accomplish that with Outreach. So we have our sellers using Outreach as their prospecting and cadence tool. And prior, we had the ability for the seller to integrate whatever phone system that they wanted to be using. Once we came out with our own Zoom Phone, we said we want all sellers to be leveraging Zoom Phone to be making their outbound calls. And instead of giving that choice to them, we integrated that directly into Outreach. And then we improved that workflow where we had sellers working from tasks and working down on the various activities that they needed to do from a prospecting perspective. And through that relatively simple integration, what we saw was that we had nearly a 240% year over year increase in call volume because it was prescriptive, because of that ease of integration. And the end result is we saw nearly 70% more meetings booked year over year as a result.
Wow. That is pretty impressive. And we're just teasing a little bit of what the Zoom Outreach integrations are capable of. And we'll dig into that a little bit later on the webinar. So make sure you stay till the end to get those good tips there too as well. This kind of answers a little bit some of, the adoption issue. But when you think about an overstacked, fragmented tech stack, what are really the risks of not having your tools working well together and stacked accordingly to where they are extensible solutions, kind of making the seller or the revenue team's workflow easier?
The biggest problem I see is inefficiency. And where the biggest risk of that is the customer impact. So I think about this in a couple ways of where is the largest inefficiency with fragmented or overstacked tech stacks. The first one is going to be siloed data. So when you have data sitting in disparate systems, it's preventing you from getting a full view of the customer. It's also preventing you from having a single source of truth of how do you think about your data, or how do you think about the performance that data is telling you. So siloed data is a big inefficiency gap. And then the other one I would say is tool overwhelm or fatigue. So when you have duplicative tools or features within tools that are doing similar things, you are going to likely see lower adoption with those tools. You're going to see an increased ramp time with your employees getting up to speed on how to use these tools because there is nuance and variance of what tool to use for what purpose or what feature within what tool to use for what purpose. And that becomes an enablement challenge over time where your employees never developing that best practice of how to use a specific tool for a specific use case. So I would say that the less fragmented a tech stack that you can have, the better customer experience that you're going to have as a result.
Totally. I have conversations often with our technology partners who are getting frustrated with adoption results when I think they probably have the superior tool in the market or have a very unique situation or unique flow that they solve for, a problem they solve for, but it doesn't work with the tools that the sellers actually are using. And so it doesn't get adopted or it doesn't get used the way that it's intended to be used. And so it's a very expensive piece of shelfware, essentially. And so they're trying to figure out ways to make their tools more extensible. And then you see that adoption. It's like you were talking about with Zoom Phone earlier. Just because a tool maybe isn't being adopted doesn't mean the value of the tool isn't there or the workflow they solve isn't relevant. It just means that they're in the wrong place and they need to be integrated better into the place where the sellers are actually working and living. With that, what do you think are some of the barriers that companies face when it comes to tech consolidation, and how maybe could teams overcome some of those barriers?
The three biggest barriers I see is cultural, political, and operational. So from a cultural perspective, there's this mindset of we've always used this tool. From a political standpoint, you have limited visibility into the various tech silos. And I think that is largely because of org design. You get into that issue. And then from an operational standpoint, that you have disconnected workflows and integrations. So when overcoming those, I would say on that cultural side, how we've always used this tool, no one I think this is human nature. No one wants things taken away from them. And I would especially say that for a seller. They do not want anything taken away from them that they deem as valuable. So my recommendation is go talk to your people, learn about what tools they're using, what purpose they're using that tool for, the fear that they have of if it were to be taken away or if they were to be steered to another tool, and use those learnings to help develop that clear business case. So help clearly articulate, what are the productivity gains if you were to consolidate? And be able to communicate back to those users, what's the value or added value that you're giving to them and their customers as a result of that consolidation. I also think that running pilots with consolidating workflows or systems is also a great way to prove out value. To answer the political one of you have, limited visibility across your tech stack. We actually just did this at Zoom where we did a Rev Tech audit. So we took all of our tools across all of our teams and we did a mapping exercise. We took that specific tool and we mapped its function, we mapped its usage, we mapped its spend, and it really helped us identify where do we have duplicative tools per se or features within those tools. And it also helped us identify, to your point earlier, of identifying those tools that had that low ROI. And that helped us make decisions and have a cross-functional conversation that maybe we weren't having prior to that. And then lastly, on the operational side, with disconnected workflows and integrations, what I would say is be really intentional of the tech stack that you have or that you're evaluating for consolidation, of making sure you have native integrations within those tools. You have open APIs, there's extensibility there, and really plan for if you're going to be consolidating or migrating, of planning those transitions well, communicate those transitions, and have that strong change management support in place.
Yeah, we talked in our kind of content briefing session about a time at Outreach where we did more of a rip and just rip instead of rip and replace. And it wasn't that we actually didn't have a tool to replace the tool we were removing, but it was just that the enablement wasn't there for the field to know that the tool was being removed and that this is the place that you needed to go to find the workflows and the answers that you would typically rely on the other tool for. And it created quite the revolt. So there's one thing to be said about stickiness of a tool, but you definitely need to understand that climate of your team to say, how do I take this tool out because it's duplicative, but also let the field know here's where you can still find the same value and maybe more in a tool that you didn't realize had it. So those are great points. But it brings us to that extensibility and integration we've been talking about, which is our partnership between Zoom and Outreach, which we are really excited about because it's evolved so much over the years as Zoom continues to grow your platform and the offerings and the products that you have, and Outreach does the same thing. It helps that one, we are users of each other. And so we are available to understand from our field, hey, this would be really great if Zoom Phone integrated Outreach, I'd use it a lot more. Or, hey, I want Zoom to do these things within Outreach. It's just really helpful to get that feedback. We're combining, these intelligent workflows with kind of Zoom's best in class communications to help our enterprise sales and account management teams grow their pipeline, close faster, reduce risk. When you think about integrations and how they make a difference for go-to-market teams, what are the kind of capabilities that you're looking for to make the biggest impact across the go-to-market organization?
Absolutely. So I would say the biggest impact is ensuring that you're not just thinking about it as connecting two systems. The example that I shared earlier about using Zoom Phone within Outreach, sure, it was integrating Zoom Phone within Outreach. However, it's the underlying capabilities that were super impactful to drive the outcomes that I shared, and it's really about connecting the data and those workflows. So when I think about the biggest capabilities for a go-to-market team, it's ensuring your integration has that seamless data flow. It's allowing for faster execution and better decision making.
Totally. And when you think about communication and execution being connected and having that data flow rolling through both of those platforms, what do you think is the biggest risk for when those things are actually disconnected?
I would say that the biggest risk is that you are going to, again, impact that customer experience. So you're going to slow it down, it's going to be fragmented, and it's going to be inconsistent. So, a couple examples of that is when those two are disconnected, you're likely going to see slower handoffs in the seller process and that buying experience. You're also going to have disjointed engagement with that customer because your communication's happening in one place or one workflow versus where that execution of being able to connect with them directly. Another is you're just going to be missing context. So if you don't have those two pieces connected, you may be missing out on a critical piece of information that would be helpful in that next follow-up conversation or that next meeting that you're going to have with that customer. And I think all of that's to say of it, if those two aren't connected, you will likely have a pretty generic, non-personalized customer experience.
Totally. Nothing is worse than having a follow up email or a follow up call with or meeting with a customer and them telling you, we talked about this on the last call. You
Right.
want to make sure that you have that stuff right in front of you, those activity notes, your call notes from the previous call or the meeting that you had. It's so important that you're able to just quickly reference those things when you get on the call and you sound prepared because reps are busy, right? They're managing hundreds of accounts. Sometimes they're having meetings every week with various accounts. They're in this world of Zoom and back-to-back calls. They're hopping from one account with one complex problem they're trying to solve to a different account with a totally different problem. And when you're able to just quickly look through those meeting notes or those call notes and understand where you are and the things that you need to talk about on this call, it really helps make sure that your reps are staying connected and that the execution, as you said, is seamless and ultimately the customers are satisfied with the conversations that they're having. With that, I think this is pretty obvious, but we definitely want to make sure we hammer this point home. What would you say to a customer who's using both Zoom and Outreach today, but maybe hasn't connected their systems yet?
Yeah, I mean, I think an easy way to answer that is you're leaving a lot of value on the table by not connecting those solutions. So let's take, for example, that you are a Zoom meetings customer, Zoom workplace customer. And you are an Outreach customer and you have Kaya as your conversational intelligence tool. By not connecting those two, what is happening is that you're losing productivity. So when you join that Zoom meeting, you may have to invite Kaya into that conversation versus if that was integrated, Kaya would automatically be coming into that conversation, being able to record, synthesize, summarize that information and next steps from that. And what's happening in that meeting is you're getting key insights, right? Like next steps, you're getting those buying signals, you're getting objections. And so having that ease of integration there available to be taking all of that information in and allowing the seller to really focus on that conversation. And again, what they're good at, which is the relationship building and the trust building, allows for Kaya to do its thing, which is taking all of that information and generating AI-powered follow-up and next steps for you. you can then use that information to put that into the next sequence or the next form of communication that you would have with that customer. You're being able to use that intelligence, and you're really getting that real-time visibility across all of the communication channels with that customer.
Totally. You said it pretty great. I don't know that I could add much more than that, but I will try because as someone who uses Kaya often, I think that it really just shows the power of our partnership by having these meetings where you're spending all of your time talking to a customer, you're trying to be present in the conversation, and you're trying to make sure that you're also capturing all of the follow-up items that you might need to do and the peace of mind that you get by having a tool like Kaya on the call, not only capturing those things for you, but also actioning them for you when you get off the call, making you more efficient, saving you time. There's also, we talked a little bit earlier about ramping employees and the complexity and the quickness of which AI is moving today. There are new features that are popping up in your tools and in the solutions that you're offering all of the time that it's hard to make a rep remember every possible thing. But when you have Kaya, which is offering that real-time enablement and those real-time content cards to remind your reps, oh, this is actually a new feature that we have, or actually for me in partnerships, this is an integration we offer, and here's how I can talk about it to my customer right now, not, oh, I need to follow up with them after the call. You don't miss that moment. Kaya now allows you to have it in real time, which is such a valuable asset to have. So we've talked about our partnership quite a bit on this webinar so far, but when we are summing things up and we want to kind of leave our attendees with one point, what would you say makes you the most excited about our partnership and makes the Zoom and Outreach integrations that we offer so valuable for revenue teams?
Yeah, what I'm most excited about is I truly believe that Zoom and Outreach are demonstrating how we are bridging the gap between communication and execution workflows. And we're doing so in a way that's offering customers flexibility in how they want to build out their tech stacks, right? And what I mean by that is we're giving the customer, we're giving you the option of what is your conversational intelligence tool that you want to bring into a Zoom meeting. That could be our AI companion, that could be Kaya, that could be your conversational intelligence of choice. We're also doing that with our phone providers. You could be using Zoom Phone. Outreach has a dialer capability. So there is so much flexibility in what works best for the sales motion for that particular company. And I think the same thing when we think about, the way that we're engaging with customers through email. We have an integration now with Outreach and our Zoom Mail integration where you can be sending emails from Outreach and the sending engine is Zoom Mail. So all of this is to say is that it is allowing customers choice and flexibility, but still being able to create that connected, efficient workflow for any go-to-market teams.
I think you summed it up well. It's how we've talked about this entire conversation that you and I have had about the extensible tech stack. It's the power of choice. It's the power about having an extensible tool that allows you to bring in your tools of choice that are going to make your revenue teams the most impactful and produce ultimately the most revenue for your company, which is what we all want at the end of the day, is to go make some money, right?
100%.
Great. So let's move on. Before we wrap up, we usually have quite a few questions in the chat, and sometimes those questions are better answered in a follow-up conversation. So please let us know if you would like to learn more about Outreach, about Zoom, about the Outreach and Zoom integrations that we offer. We would be happy to help answer any of those questions. So we have a little pop-up that's going to see on your screen right now. If you would like to be connected to learn more, just click yes, I'd like to learn more about Outreach. Or if you are an Outreach and Zoom expert, feel free to say no thanks. We're all set for now. Before we end, I want to thank Kelly especially for joining us and dropping all of those insights. It really is so helpful. Hopefully people are feeling a little bit more insightful about their tech stacks with ways to go and actually consolidate some of these tools that maybe they've been trying to figure out how to connect. And we hope that everyone here is walking away with actionable takeaways for consolidating their tech stack. Thank you so much for joining us, Kelly. Thank you for all of your insights. And a few quick reminders before we wrap. You will be receiving a recording of today's session via email. And for questions that we didn't get a chance to answer, we will follow up with you directly. Thank you so much for joining us.